Dust blew across the valley like a warning. It was late afternoon in eastern Afghanistan, and the sun cast long shadows across the jagged rock formations of the Korangal Valley. The air felt too still, the silence too complete. Even the goats that usually wandered along the ridge trails were gone. Inside the makeshift forward operations post, Lieutenant Kyle Marks reviewed the recon intel with his 6-man SEAL team. The mission brief was straightforward: survey of suspected weapons. Cache buried deep in a canyon known as Echo Vulture. According to satellite imagery, the area was quite abandoned. But Sergeant Adrian Vega didn't believe it for a second. He leaned over the shoulder of one of the team's techs, squinting at the satellite feed frozen on the laptop screen. "That canyon's a funnel," he muttered. "One way in, one way out. No high ground for us, but plenty for them." Marks looked up. "Intel says it's cold. No confirmed enemy presence for a week." Vega shook his head slowly. "It's too clean. Terrain like that is never empty unless someone wants it that way." "Noted," Mark said, glancing at his watch. "We go in an hour. Prep and roll." The SEALs moved gear up, the usual tension in the air, but today it carried a different weight. Vega's instincts weren't nerves. They were sharpened over 3 tours and nearly 24 ops. He wasn't a man who jumped at shadows. If he was uneasy, there was usually a reason. Up on the ridge, overlooking the very canyon the SEALs were preparing to enter, a different kind of soldier lay prone in the rocks. He wore no unit patch. His ghillie suit was patched with local brush and dust. His rifle was nestled on a hand-cut mat of camel hair, stone, and cloth. He didn't speak, didn't move, didn't blink. His name was Reed. His calsawing, at least among the few who whispered it, was Ghost 6. No official roster had listed him in years. No mission briefing ever included his name. Reed had once been a Navy SEAL himself, a Tier 1 operator and sniper whose reputation stretched into legend. But after a classified incident in 2019, he disappeared. No discharge, no reassignment. Just gone, but he hadn't stopped. Reed didn't take orders anymore. He intercepted missions from unsecured comms, scanned black market radio chatter, and monitored encrypted chatter through hacked sat links. When he heard certain keywords, trap, canyon, patrol, he went, not to interfere, not for vengeance, but because he couldn't forget what had happened to his brother in a similar canyon years ago. He cleaned his scope slowly, watching the 6-man team descend into the canyon far below. His eyes didn't blink behind the lens. His heartbeat remained at 58 beats per minute. His finger rested lightly on the trigger of an M201, an enhanced sniper rifle, modified with a titanium barrel and custom suppressor. Reed had been in that canyon for 2 days. No movement from the far ridgeline until an hour ago, then flashes of shadow. Too precise. Too cautious. An ambush was coming. But the SEALs didn't know it. Down below, Vega checked his radio. Static. Too much interference for such an open area. He clicked to secondary channels. Still dead. "That's not right," he muttered. Private Jenkins, the youngest on the team, slung his weapon and chuckled. "Probably just mountains messing with the signal, right?" Vega gave him a long look. "No, that's not it." Lieutenant Marks walked up. "We sweep the outer canyon first. Move slow. Watch the walls." They advanced in a staggered formation. No talking. Just boots crunching loose rock and rifles sweeping like pendulums. The walls on either side of the canyon seemed to rise higher with every step. A few vultures circled silently overhead. Reed saw the hostiles before the SEALs were halfway through. 24 armed fighters, split across both ridges, well camouflaged. RPGs, Russian optics, disciplined spacing. Not Taliban. Not amateur warlords. These were trained, hired, waiting. He checked the time. They were going to open fire in under 60 seconds. Reed had options. He could disengage. It wasn't his mission. It never was. But he'd watched these 6 men move. Their spacing was tight. Their awareness was sharp. They weren't green. And yet, they were walking into a bloodbath. He adjusted the wind dial on. His scope. Down below, Vega froze mid-step. Down, he said suddenly. Down. Too late. The cliffs exploded with automatic fire. Muzzle flashes like fireworks lit the shadows above. Bullets screamed through the canyon. Jenkins went down, first hit in the leg. Mark scrambled to cover behind a boulder, returning fire in bursts. Chaos. Shouting. No escape. Until, above it. LL crack. A single shot rang from the ridge. One of the ambushers dropped. Not slumped. Dropped. Clean, lifeless. A .300 Winchester, round through the temple. Then another. Crack. Another hostile, folded backward. Mid-reload. Vega crouched beside. The wounded Jenkins looked up sharply. That wasn't one of us. Mark stared toward the ridge. Who's shooting? Vega's expression turned dark. Not who. What? Another echoing crack. Another enemy fell. Controlled, unrelenting. Far above, Reed adjusted his position. Again, already zeroing in on the next target. The canyon might have been a trap, but now, someone had just flipped the board. The canyon turned into a kill zone. Muzzle flashes danced from the ridges like a devil's symphony. Hot metal screamed through the air, striking stone and gear with deafening force. A rock near Vega exploded into fragments, pelting his cheek, and drawing blood. He didn't flinch. He shoved Jenkins against the canyon wall and fired a tight burst at the cliff. No effect. He couldn't even see them clearly. Suppressing left ridge. Mark shouted, sliding behind a rock slab and squeezing his trigger in short, angry bursts. Another SEAL, Harper, was crouched beside him, blood trickling down his forearm. Jenkins is hit? Vega yelled. Bleeder. Tourniquet now. Came the reply. The team was surrounded. No radio contact. No support. And no exit unless they moved forward directly through the line of fire. The shooters above were trained. This wasn't some random ambush. They coordinated fire, pinning. The team with waves from alternating flanks. Vega knew what this was. A kill box. Designed to trap and exhaust, not just kill. Designed to humiliate. The team was minutes away from collapse. Then came another sharp crack, this time closer than before. One of the shooters positioned behind. A large rock on the southern ridge jerked backward and vanished from sight. Blood misted behind his collapsing frame. The fire slowed for a moment. Confusion rippled among the attackers. They hadn't seen the shot's origin. No recoil flash. No sound delay. Just a sudden, precise death. Did someone get him? Harper asked, panting through his adrenaline. That wasn't me. Negative, Mark said. Eyes up. Check. The ridgeline. That was an external shot. External from where? Harper asked. Vega knew the answer. His eyes scanned high. Another shot cracked, this time from the northern ridge. A shooter trying to reposition with an RPG took the bullet in the neck and tumbled down the slope, his body bouncing off jagged rocks as the launcher clanged against the stone. Sniper, Vega growled. Up top, not ours. Marks looked confused. For a moment, who the hell would be? Vega cut him off. Ghost 6. The name dropped like a cold stone. Marks blinked. That's a myth. He's a rumor, not real. Vega didn't argue. Tell that to the 2 dead hostiles. Far above, Reed adjusted his sight once more. The noise below faded into a quiet rhythm. For him, just breath, wind, range, and timing. He'd repositioned 30 meters east after the first 2 shots. Standard practice. Never fire from the same place twice. The attackers weren't amateurs, but they weren't ready for someone like him. He had already cataloged their positions based on scope glint, muzzle flash, and shadow behavior. He even knew which ones were. Coordinating orders. He started eliminating them next. Crack. The team leader on the East Ridge dropped instantly, mid-radio command. 2 seconds later, the assistant spotter next to him stood stunned before a second shot punched through his vest. Below, the SEALs didn't waste the opportunity. Push forward. Marks ordered. Use the chaos. Vega carried Jenkins on his shoulder, grunting with each step but refusing to slow down. The others advanced in fire teams. 2 covered while 2 moved. The enemy gunfire grew wild. Panicked. What the hell is going on? Harper muttered. They're folding. They weren't expecting resistance from above, Mark said. Whoever's shooting is tearing their comms apart. They moved quickly through the canyon, now using the walls for cover. An enemy. Machine gun on the western cliff tried to light them up, but was silenced by a headshot before it could fire the 3rd round. Every time we're pinned, he clears it, Vega said under his breath. He's not just helping, he's controlling the fight. And that's exactly what Reed was doing. He worked with brutal precision, not just eliminating threats, but shaping the flow of the battle. His shots created openings. His silences baited. Movement. His timing turned the SEALs' advance into a chess game, and he was several moves ahead, but even he wasn't invincible. A sharp burst snapped near his position. Someone on the enemy ridge had spotted the glint from his scope. A sniper. Or someone lucky. A round kicked up dust inches from his right elbow. Reed didn't panic. He rolled left, slid down behind a shale shelf, and scanned the angle of fire. He found the shooter fast. Long beard, Dragunov rifle, camo mismatched. Hiding beneath a camouflage tarp that billowed slightly in the wind. Rookie. Mistake. Crack. One less sniper. Back in the canyon, Jenkins groaned through gritted teeth. Blood soaked his pant leg, but Vega had stabilized the wound. You're not dying today, he told him. Wasn't planning to. Jenkins CROAKED. More gunfire. Closer now. Not from above, but ground-level. Marks peered around a boulder and spotted 5 remaining fighters trying to rush down the canyon path to flank them. Contact low left. The SEALs fired in unison, dropping 2, but the rest ducked behind an OUTCROP. Then, again, came that familiar crack. One more fell, then another. The last turned to flee only to fall mid-step. 3 rounds. 3 bodies. Who shoots like that? Harper muttered. Vega answered without looking. Only one man I've ever heard of. The battlefield fell eerily silent. The SEALs regrouped behind a rock wall at the canyon's mouth. Everyone accounted for. Jenkins still breathing. Harper nursing a shallow graze. Marks tapped Vega on the shoulder. If this is Ghost 6, he saved us. Vega didn't reply. He just looked up toward the ridge, where dust rose in slow spirals. No sign of life. No silhouette. Just rock and sky. Yeah, he said finally, but he won't stick around. Reed was already on the move, sliding away from his firing position, vanishing behind the ridge without leaving a footprint. He never stayed. He never watched the results, because the next mission was already waiting. The canyon smelled of sulfur and scorched dirt. The final echoes of gunfire had faded, leaving behind an unnatural silence that pressed against the SEALs' eardrums. It wasn't over yet. They all felt it. The adrenaline still pumped. The tension still crackled. Even the birds knew better than to return. Lieutenant Marks moved cautiously across the canyon floor, his weapon raised, scanning the cliffs above. No movement, he whispered, but don't let your guard down. Sergeant. Vega was still kneeling next to Jenkins. checking the clotting around the tourniquet. The young SEAL's face was pale but focused. "I'm good," Jenkins grunted. "Just pissed I didn't get a shot off." "You stayed alive," Vega replied. "You win." From behind them, Harper approached with a set jaw. "I don't care what intel says," he said. "There were at least 25 shooters up there." Marks nodded. "And we took out maybe 6. 6, Vega repeated. "And the rest? They didn't fall to us." The 3 SEALs turned slowly and looked. Toward the high northern ridge. Nothing. Just rocks, sky, and silence. "Reed," Vega said finally. Marks exhaled. "You still believe it's him?" "I know it's him," Vega said. "I trained under the guy before he disappeared. I only ever saw him shoot live once. Never forgot the sound of that rifle. The way targets dropped like they never existed." "Command classified him KIA," Harper added. "Yeah, well," Vega said. "Command classifies anything they can't explain." High above them, Reed Ghost 6 was already on the move. He moved like vapor, a ghost sliding over the ridgeline without sound. His camo cloak blended perfectly with the mountain terrain, sewn by hand using torn-up local fabric and synthetic netting. His rifle was strapped across his back, and he carried no radio, no GPS, no digital trail. He didn't need them. Reed had spent the last 6 years alone. His existence was stitched together through broken transmissions, intercepted enemy chatter, and gut instinct. After his brother SEAL sniper, Logan Reed, had been killed in a failed ambush rescue op in 2018, something inside Reed snapped loose. The war didn't end for him. It evolved. He stopped asking permission, stopped accepting orders. He just showed up where death was coming and prevented it. He had no country now, no rank, only purpose. Below, the SEALs were moving again. With Jenkins stabilized and fire zones cleared, Marks led the team down the final stretch of the canyon. The enemy had fallen back completely, likely because whoever had been coordinating them was no longer breathing. Still, the squad stayed. Sharp. Vega took rear, scanning high with a veteran's awareness. "You ever talk to him?" Harper asked under his breath. "Reed?" Vega replied. "Once, long time ago." "What did he say?" Vega smirked faintly. "He said, 'You don't fire unless it means one less flag-draped casket.' That was it." Harper let out a short breath. "Cold." "No," Vega corrected. "Focused." Ahead of them, the canyon began to open up into a wider valley, a natural extraction point. The terrain flattened, and the jagged cliff faces slowly gave way to low hills and broken shale. They were out but far from safe. As the SEALs regrouped in the clearing, Mark signaled for a tight perimeter. "We hold here," he said. "Wait for extraction. Drone recon confirms the area is clean. Whatever force was up there, it's gone." "Correction," Vega said. "It's dead." He wasn't trying to be dramatic. He was stating a fact, because Reed didn't leave survivors. From his new vantage point half a kilometer west, Reed lay flat against the ridge, glassing the valley through a spotting scope. He wasn't checking for enemies. He was watching the SEALs, checking for injuries, counting heads, confirming the mission was complete. He saw Vega standing alert with his weapon low and his eyes sweeping the rocks. Reed allowed himself one breath of satisfaction. Then he reached into a small pouch tied around his chest. Inside were 2 things: a black bullet casing etched with longitude and latitude markings, and a small patch an old SEAL trident, frayed and worn from years of weather. He placed the casing on a flat rock, polished it once with a cloth, and left it exposed in the sun. Pointed toward the clearing, his calling card. He'd never spoken to the men he saved, never shook their hands. But he always left a mark. Not for recognition, but so they'd know someone was watching, someone still cared. Back below, Harper's binoculars, caught a flash of light on the hill. He zoomed in, squinting. Viga. Yeah? Top of that western ridge. Something's glinting. Viga took the binoculars, steadied them, and went still. The casing was sitting perfectly upright, catching the sunlight like a mirror. Is that? Viga didn't finish the sentence. Marks approached. What is it? Viga passed in the scope. Marks raised it, stared for a long moment, then slowly lowered the binoculars. He was real. Told you, Viga said. The team sat in silence. The kind of silence that didn't beg to be broken. Then, finally, Jenkins chuckled weakly. So we just got saved by a ghost? No, Viga said. By a man no one ever wanted to believe existed. Harper looked around. Think we'll see him again? Viga gave the only answer that felt honest. If we're lucky, we'll never have to. The Black Hawk cut low over the valley, blades chopping through the mountain air as dusk settled. Dust kicked up around the extraction point as the SEALs signaled in silence, eyes still scanning the ridges. The pilot's voice crackled over the headset, but even the arrival of a ride home didn't shake the tension. Sergeant Viga helped lift Jenkins into the berg, his blood-soaked pant legs still wrapped in layers of combat gauze. Jenkins managed a grin, half delirious. Tell command I want a medal, and a rifle signed by the guy who saved our ass. If we ever find him, Harper muttered. They didn't speak again during the flight. No one did. Back at the forward operating base, the team went straight into debriefing. 2 intelligence officers were waiting in the tent. Major Colburn from JSOC and SCIA, liaison with blank eyes and a sharper haircut than necessary. Colburn looked up as Marks entered. You're lucky to be alive, he said. Marks nodded. Luck had nothing to do with it. You were surrounded by 24 coordinated fighters with high ground advantage. No UAV support, no backup, and you suffered 1 casualty? Colburn leaned forward. Explain that. Viga, still covered in dust and dried blood, stepped in beside Marks. We had support. From who? The CIA officer asked. Not from. Who? Viga said. From Ghost 6. The officers exchanged a quick look. Colburn's brow furrowed. Excuse me? Ghost 6, Marks repeated calmly. He was on the ridge. Took out at least 15 tangos. Single-handedly cleared 2 sniper nests and broke the ambush. We advanced because of him. That name doesn't exist in any active roster. The CIA officer said. Viga took out a small black casing from his vest. He placed it on the table between them. The officers leaned closer. The casing was matte black, polished and etched with tiny coordinates on its side numbers precise to 8 decimals. Viga tapped it once. He left this. Colburn picked it up. Where? Top of the western ridge. It was sitting upright, perfectly placed in the sun. Not an accident. That's ridiculous, the CIA officer said. You're telling me a rogue sniper tracked your mission, beat you to the canyon, and eliminated a whole ambush unit on his own? Without authorization? Without communication? Without identification? Vega didn't blink. Yes. Colburn rubbed his forehead, annoyed but intrigued. There's no operational allowance for this. No field report. If this is real, if he shouldn't be in theater, that's a breach. No, Mark said. That's what kept us alive. The room went quiet. Back on the mountains, hundreds of kilometers away, Reed walked alone beneath a darkening sky. His rifle was slung over his shoulder, but his pace never slowed. He passed over a narrow goat trail, took shelter inside a rock hollow, and built a smokeless fire no larger than his hand. He didn't feel heroic. He never had. The war had taken everything from him: his brother, his career, his name. What remained was purpose, precision. A promise he'd once made over a closed casket. If I ever see it coming again, I'll be the one they don't expect. He kept his word. Again, quietly. That night, in his notebook, kept in code and marked only with initials, he logged the coordinates and a simple phrase. SEAL Team Echo survived. 6 of 6. Hostiles neutralized. 17 confirmed. 2 unconfirmed. No visual compromise. Ridge cleared. He closed the book. Ate a protein bar. And slept with one eye open, ear tuned to the wind dot at the base. The team wasn't allowed to rest yet. Debrief extended into a second round, this time with video reviews from helmet cams. But no one had footage of Reed. Not a shadow. Not a flicker. The only record was the aftermath corpses high on the cliffs, each killed with precise, non-repeating shots. No double taps. No misses. Clean. Surgical. Cold. The JSOC analysts murmured. Over the clips. Those are sniper shots, no question. Ridge angles match. Same direction. Same distance. Over a dozen from 2 separate positions, within a 5-minute window. Impossible for one man. No, Vega said quietly from the side of the tent. Not impossible, just not average. Then who the hell is this guy? One analyst asked. Vega replied without hesitation. Staff Sergeant Mason Reed. Sniper. Dev Grew. Tier 1 operator. Stationed at Dam Neck. Officially MIA, presumed KIA 5 years ago. Colburn looked up from his notes. That name's redacted. Exactly. The CIA officer stood, clearly irritated. If what you're saying is true, then we've got a rogue sniper operating on unsanctioned missions. That's a liability. Not a savior. Vega stepped forward slowly, voice tight. If he's a liability, then tell that to the 25 men he's saved. You think this is the first time he's shown up? Ask the Green Berets, who survived the convoy hit in Coast last spring. Ask the Marine Recon Unit pulled out of Helmand last November. Ask them who took the shot that saved their lives. And you think it was him every time? No, Vega said. I know. The officers didn't argue. They couldn't, because truth doesn't always come with paperwork. Sometimes it arrives in silence. It had been 6 years since Mason Red watched his brother bleed out on a slab of Afghan limestone. The memory never dulled. It wasn't just the moment Logan died. It was the lead-up. The silence before the ambush. The feeling that something was wrong. The exact same feeling Vega had in that canyon. Reed had ignored it. They were deployed together with a Tier 1 unit during Operation Black Hive, hunting a high-value target in the remote Asadabad district. Logan Reed, his younger brother, was a spotter, sharp-eyed and calm under pressure. They weren't just SEALs. They were brothers in the deepest sense. Blood, code, and fire. That mission was supposed to be easy. It was bait. Intel claimed the HVT was holed up in a mud compound. But something felt off. Too much movement nearby. Too much chatter over enemy frequencies. Reed flagged it during pre-op. Command. Push forward anyway. Clear the compound then. Extract. You've done this 100 times. They entered the valley under moonlight. No noise. No dogs barking. No lights in the village. Logan had whispered, "You feel that?" Something's off. Reed's reply haunted him forever. Stay close. We're in and out. They never made it out. The ridges lit up with muzzle flashes as they reached the center of the valley. Logan was hit first chest and shoulder. Reed dragged him behind a half wall, plugging the wound with trembling hands. Hold on, stay awake, he whispered, watching his brother choke on blood. The medevac was delayed by enemy fire. 35 minutes. Too long. By the time the chopper came, Logan was gone. Reed didn't cry. He just stared, burned it into memory. And in that moment, he knew something inside him had changed forever. Back in the present, Ghost 6 stared at the valley below through a battered monocular. His position now was much higher, 8,000 feet above sea level on the Chark Ridgeline, near Logar Province. A convoy of special operations trucks moved slowly down the switchbacks below. He wasn't here to interfere. Just observe. That was his life now. Watch. Intervene only when death was certain. His gear was stripped down. He carried only what he needed. 1 rifle, 1 secondary, 6 mags, purified water, protein bars, solar radio, thermal blanket, and a notebook. Always the notebook. It contained every intercepted mission, every sighting of him by survivors, and every life he saved. He wrote no poetry, only truth. On page 71, he had a line written from 3 years earlier. You do not need to be seen to change the outcome. He closed the book and began crawling along the ridgeline toward his secondary hideout at the U.S. military base in Bagram. Tension rippled through the intelligence wing. Lieutenant Marks sat at a desk lined with still frames pulled from helmet cam footage. He was reviewing timestamps, trying to spot muzzle flashes or shadows from the ridge. But Ghost 6 had left nothing behind except that one black casing. The analysts were baffled. His trajectory suggests 2 different shooting positions within 5 minutes, one said. You can't move 200 meters across jagged elevation and stay unseen. He did. Marks muttered. Vega entered the tent with a folder under his arm. He tossed it on the table. Classified Recon 2019. Operation Black Hive. 17 KIA. 1 Mia Mason Reed. You pulled this? Marks asked. No, Vega said. I memorized it 4 years ago. The folder held photos, grayscale shots of the valley where Logan died. Among the pages was a reprimand report. Reed had broken comms protocol and attempted to call off the mission. Command denied the abort. A week later, Reed was marked missing. Everyone said he ran, Vega said. They called him unstable. Syed. Losing his brother broke him. Marks raised an eyebrow. And what do you think? I think it fixed him in the worst possible way, Vega replied. He made himself into something they couldn't control. Marks looked at the folder. Or understand. Somewhere near Ghazni, a warlord sat inside a fortified compound built with steel and fear. His men, former militia fighters, turned gun runners, were reviewing footage from the failed ambush against the SEAL team. 27 men, the warlord snarled. We lost them all, his lieutenant replied nervously. They had support. From the ridge. What support? 1 man, sniper. The warlord leaned forward. What man can kill that many before anyone even sees him? The lieutenant hesitated, then said what no fighter in the region dared say aloud. They call him Shaba al-Jabal, the ghost on the mountain. The warlord scoffed, then looked away in unease. Back in the mountains, Reed built a new perch south-facing, overlooking a thin trail likely to be used by a Taliban commander moving weapons on Mulebach. He adjusted his rifle, settled into the rock, and waited. He could wait hours, days. He didn't have a base. He didn't have orders. He only had instinct and time. And when the convoy eventually came, 7 men, 2 mules, weapons packed under burlap, he didn't fire. He simply watched. Studied the route. Committed it to memory. Some missions weren't about pulling the trigger. Some were about knowing when not to. But he left a casing behind anyway. In the dirt. Facing west. He always did. In Bagram. Colburn received a private, encrypted message from JSOC Command. Multiple unconfirmed reports of single sniper activity across 4 regions. Patterns consistent with raid. Satellite thermal overlays suggest operators still active. Recommend stand down. Do not engage. If encountered, observe only. Colburn sat back in his chair. They're not even trying to stop him anymore, he said to the CIA liaison. The man shrugged. You don't cage a shadow. What if he's ever compromised? The liaison smiled coldly. Then the people who compromise him disappear. 2 nights later, just past 0300 hours, a covert CIA-aligned recon team, Calcine Echo 9, crept into the Narang Valley. Their objective was simple: tag a weapons stash rumored to be fueling Taliban ambush cells. But simple never existed in these mountains. Echo 9's leader, Captain Talia Knox, had that same sixth sense Vega once described. A tightening in the chest, the way the wind stopped moving, the way shadows sat wrong under moonlight. Her unit moved with silent precision, NVGs sweeping for movement, feet avoiding dry brush. 20 minutes in, a faint static squeal hit their "Comes, repeat that command?" Knox whispered. Silence. Then, crack, not a gunshot. A branch behind them. Knox spun, but it was already too late. A claymore rigged under soft dirt detonated with surgical ferocity. The blast killed 2 instantly, maimed a 3rd. The remaining 5 went for cover as bullets raked down the hill. Sniper fire from above. 2 directions. But not Ghost 6. This was the enemy. High above them, 1,200 yards to the north, Reed was already prone, watching everything unfold through his scope. He had been watching the valley for 6 hours, waiting for the convoy he'd spotted 2 nights earlier. Instead, Echo 9 walked into a kill box. He recognized the trap immediately. Reed's hand hovered over the bolt. Firing now would give away his position. Again, risk further exposure. A 3rd incident in 1 week could make even JSOC take action. But Captain Knox, the leader pinned down by a burning jeep, had frozen in place, shouting into a busted comm, bleeding from her shoulder. She looked up, toward the ridge. Her eyes didn't reach him, but her desperation did. In the ground, Colonel Colburn was drinking burnt coffee when the emergency alert hit the screen. ECH-09 in contact, coordinates locked. Immediate support unavailable. Marks burst into the room. "Sir, it's happening again. They're pinned. No air support for 40 minutes. But get this satellite thermal. Just pinged movement. Lone figure, Northridge, prone." Colburn stood slowly. "The ghost." Marks nodded. "If he's up there, this team might survive. And if he doesn't act, they won't." At 1,267 yards, Reed adjusted for wind. He saw Knox drag the injured corporal behind a rock slab, then pull her sidearm. Her other arm hung limp. The enemy marksman was behind an outcrop of shale. Professional. Possibly Iranian trained. "Hard to see, harder to hit." Reed whispered. "Breathe." He slowed everything. Time. Pulse. Thought. Then fired. The shot cut through mountain air like a scalpel. It struck the sniper dead center in the throat. A puff of red mist trailing into the darkness. Reed adjusted without flinching. 5 more enemy shooters. 2 downhill, 3 flanking the rear tree line. He didn't hesitate. Pop, headshot, pop. Chest, pop. Through 2 shoulders, pop. Missed, then corrected. Pop. Clean eye socket. 6 seconds. 6 shots. Then silence. The mountains returned to stillness, the kind that doesn't belong after gunfire. Knox looked up again. This time she saw it barely. A tiny flicker of movement high on the ridge. A silhouette against the stars. Then gone. An hour later, the CIA liaison stormed into Colburn's tent with a data packet. "This makes 3. He's crossed the line." Colburn looked up. He saved them. He engaged in 3 separate regions. That's no longer silent observation. That's rogue interference. Colburn tapped the folder containing Reed's file. "He's saved. More Americans than you've extracted this month." "Doesn't matter. The higher-ups want containment." "You mean capture?" "No. I mean asset classification. He's not a SEAL anymore. He's an unauthorized lethal entity with no chain of command. Colburn clenched his jaw. If they move on him, someone else is going to bleed. In a mountain cave deeper into Nuristan, Reed checked his rifle. 1 bullet less. 1 team saved. But his time was shrinking. He'd left another casing at the site, this one scratched with a name. T. Knox. He didn't know why. Maybe it was a warning. Maybe a message. You were worth saving. His notebook now had a new entry. Sometimes the mission chooses you, and sometimes it chooses to haunt you. He flipped back to an older page. A name he hadn't read in a long time. Logan. Ridge 42. You deserve better. He closed the book, eyes hardening. The war wasn't done. Meanwhile, Captain Knox was in a med-evac tent, getting her shoulder stitched. She held the casing in her hand. Her mind raced. How could someone shoot with that kind of speed, precision, and vanish before even satellite pinged him? She'd heard of Legend's ghost on the mountain, the whisper, Ridge Reaper. But this was real. Who saved us? She asked the medic. He shrugged. Nobody's saying. But you're not the first. Knox held the casing tighter. I want to meet him. The mountain trembled with thunder that night. Not from storms, but movement. Militant commanders began relocating assets. They feared the sniper. Whispers spread like infection. He sees. Before you fire, he's always on the ridge. He does not miss. And somewhere near the Pakistan border, an elite Russian mercenary unit took interest in the rumors. They weren't afraid. They were hunting. The snow had not yet touched the upper ridge of Koh-i-Noor, but Reed could feel a coldness creeping in, not from weather, but from eyes. Someone was watching. For days, he had sensed the change. Scattered radio frequencies that didn't match Taliban. Chatter, the sound of boots that moved in patterns unlike tribal militia, and the quiet silence that followed, too disciplined to be local fighters. It wasn't a feeling. It was instinct. Reed wasn't being avoided anymore. He was being hunted. 700 miles away, in a soundproofed command room in Moscow. A silent exchange occurred between 2 men over a blacked-out satellite feed. A name flickered on screen. Asset. Ghost 6. Status. Active. The older man nodded to the other. Proceed. And that was all. 3 nights later, 6 men landed in Nuristan, brought in via unofficial Pakistani corridors. They were Zoslin, a clandestine Russian kill team trained to track, disarm, and terminate high-value ghost operatives. Their commander, Viktor Malenko, had read the entire declassified file on Ghost 6. Seal. Expert-level sniper, top of his class. In wind compensation, former Tier 1 asset. Went dark after Ridge 42. Operated solo, self-supplied, self-sustained. Confirmed kill count, 46. Suspected. Double. No thermal signature in 2 years. No footprints. Just bullet casings polished, numbered, left behind. Victor grinned. We'll leave none behind. Reed moved camp again. By the 4th night, he was off-grid, deep in the Kantiwa Hills, sleeping no more than an hour at a time. Changing elevation, disabling trails with diversionary tripwires. He began hearing metal clicks that weren't his. Stones moved slightly off-angle. And then a clear sign. The bark from a tree nearby had been freshly carved. Vertical lines. 5. 1 cross mark, the hunter's symbol. A score counter. They were already counting the days he'd survived. He checked. His scope's alignment, loaded his last 2 suppressor-coated rounds, and descended into Shuttle Gorge. If they wanted him, they had to earn it. That night, the trap was sprung. Reed, lying beneath a bush with his heart barely above resting, watched one of the Russian operatives break off from formation, likely to flank him. That was mistake 1. Mistake 2 was that they'd underestimated Reed's proximity. With a suppressed flick, Reed squeezed. Thup. The Russian dropped. He didn't stay to admire it. Instead, he moved uphill the exact opposite of what they expected. He passed through a goat path where his tripwire detonated. 2 grenades wired to a tin pot exploded, sending shrapnel and panic. Then, a third mistake. Victor fired wildly into the dark. He revealed his position. From 90 meters away, Reed whispered, "Got you?" He aimed for center mass and fired. But something felt wrong. The target dropped too fast. Not Victor. A decoy. A dummy wrapped in THERMALS. The real Victor came from behind. The fight was fast, brutal, and without rules. Reed was tackled, rolled into shale, elbowed in the ribs, disarmed of his rifle. He blocked the knife with his forearm, drawing blood, then twisted into a roll, flipping Victor onto a sharp rock edge. They both drew pistols point blank. 2 shots. Both missed. Victor grinned. "You are good," Reed replied coldly. "You're late." It ended when Reed pulled the flare charge he had rigged hours earlier, yanking it from the dirt and smashing it between them. Blinding flash. By the time Victor's vision returned, Reed was gone. Again. But the Russian's ear was ringing and bleeding. Reed had left a final surprise. A ceramic knife planted just deep enough to send a message, not kill. "If I wanted you dead, you'd be ashes." At a covert ops base in Kabul, Colonel Colburn received an encrypted note slipped under his bunk mat. It read, "Zalslan in A.O. engaged. 5 disabled. 6th warned. No civilian casualties. Still watching." G6 Colburn knew what that meant. Raid had just taken on a Russian kill team and lived. He also knew one more thing. Whoever sanctioned this kill op wasn't just foreign. Someone inside the U.S. wanted Reed eliminated. Back in the mountains, Reed stitched his own side wound using nylon thread from his gear bag. No morphine. No sedation. As he lit a small fire to cauterize the bleeding, he opened his notebook. One new entry. "Sometimes you're not hunted for what you've done, but for what you refuse to do for them." Then he circled a name he had written 3 years ago but never contacted again. Talia Knox, and beneath it, a single phrase. "Trust is the riskiest bullet of all." Somewhere, in a locked CI skiff room, Knox stared at the same casing she now wore around her neck. She hadn't told anyone, not even her handler, but in her gut she knew. The man they were hunting wasn't the problem. He was the solution. And if he was now being hunted by Russians, by ghosts, by her own government, then the question wasn't if he'd survive. It was whether he'd let anyone survive him. The night was ink black, pierced only by a crescent moon hanging low over the rugged ridge line. Mason Red crouched behind a jagged boulder, the cold biting at his fingers, heart beating slow but steady. Every muscle coiled for the inevitable. Russians had come for him again. But this time, so had others. Far below, a convoy of black SUVs rolled quietly into the valley. A CIA extraction team led by Captain Talia Knox. She had tracked Reed's movements through a patchwork of intelligence and satellite data, but tonight, she was here to offer something he had long refused, a chance to come home. Reed's mind flashed back to the first time. He fired his rifle with lethal intent, the moment Logan died. Since then, he had lived in the shadows, a phantom rewriting the rules. But now, he was faced with a choice. Stay hidden and let the war consume everyone around him, or risk everything for one last mission. On the ridge above, Viktor Malenko and his remaining operatives prepared their assault. They moved in silence, weapons ready, hold, and precise. Their orders were clear: terminate Ghost 6 and leave no trace. But they hadn't accounted for Knox. Her team slipped through the foothills like ghosts themselves, setting up overwatch positions with military-grade optics and suppressed weapons. Knox's voice crackled softly over comms. "Reed, this is Knox. We're here to help. You don't have to fight this alone." Reed's lips twitched into a ghost of a smile. "Trust is the riskiest bullet of all," he whispered back. The trap was set. Reed's eyes scanned the ridge, calculating distance, wind speed, angles. Spotted Victor's silhouette moving cautiously near a tree lined steely, unyielding. But Knox's voice interrupted his focus. "They're moving in fast. We need to act now." Reed loaded his rifle, chambered around, and exhaled. The crosshairs aligned perfectly on Victor's chest. "Do it," Knox urged. Reed hesitated. It wasn't about hitting the target. It was about who fired first. Suddenly, the night exploded into chaos. Gunfire erupted from the ridge as Russian operatives spotted Knox's team. Shadows darted between rocks, tracer rounds lighting the sky. Red fired. One shot, clean, silent, deadly. Victor dropped. Two operatives surged forward. Reed rolled behind cover, pistol drawn, taking out one before the other dove behind a boulder. Knox's team moved swiftly, engaging the enemy in tight, brutal firefights. The echoes of suppressed weapons filled the canyon. Minutes stretched like hours. Reed, bleeding from a grazed shoulder, kept moving. He radioed Knox. "Clear for extraction, but we're not safe yet." Her voice came back steady. "Understood. Hold position. Extraction inbound in 10. As the firefight waned, the last Russian operative broke cover, only to freeze under Reed's rifle sight. "No more running," Reed said quietly. The man dropped his weapon and raised his hands. At the extraction point, helicopters thundered in, rotors whipping dust and leaves into a frenzy. Knox and Reed's team retreated with urgency, wounded carried in eyes scanning for threats. Reed looked back at the ridge, empty now, except for the ghosts of the past. The war wasn't over, but tonight a Phantom's mission had ended. Days later, back at a secure base, Reed sat across from Colonel Colburn. "You've been off the grid for years," Colburn said. "Why come back now?" Reed's eyes held a flicker of something unspoken. "Because sometimes the war chooses the man. Sometimes the man chooses to stop running." Colburn nodded slowly. "You made a difference, saved lives." Reed gave a rare smile. "I was never alone." Captain Knox entered, carrying the black casing, the one Red always left behind. She placed it on the table. "It's time people knew the truth." Reed leaned forward, voice steady. "Not every hero wants a name. Some just want their bullets to count." The room was silent, the weight of unspoken sacrifices hanging in the air. Outside, the sun rose over the mountains. A new day, and the ghost on the ridge was finally at peace.